y hoy nos trae el tema Space Tourism. It's here and it's real. O sea, hello, y esto es en inglés, tiene esa traducción. Por ahí nos están ayudando. Por favor, un aplauso para el licenciado José Roberto. Hola, hola. Voy a platicar en inglés. Discúlpeme, porque yo viví en México hasta que tenía 10 años, así que hablo el español como un niño. Así que, so I'm going to speak in English because I can speak English like an adult. You know, ever since Frank got involved in medical tourism, for many years I said to Frank, I said, hey, I want to be involved. Like, can I help you plan? Can I help you organize? And he said, you know, you need to speak. You need to get up and speak because you've done a lot with your career. And I said, well, I don't know anything about medical tourism. I just said, I'm going to think about something. And I said, well, I know about space tourism. That could be interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about space tourism and the implications it has to healthcare, to pharmaceutical research, and even to medical services. But before I do, I want to tell you my medical tourism story. My medical tourism story was completely accidental. Era un accidente. A mí me gusta surfear en muchos lugares del mundo. Mis amigos, los Pérez, me enseñaron cómo surfear cuando tenía 24 años. Y he ido a todos los lugares del mundo a surfear. So I was, back to English, I was surfing in Cabo San Lucas. Me and my friend, Gringo, Jamie, blonde hair, everybody paid attention to him, but we went to a place in Cabo that was a little bit dangerous. In the same day, I got attacked by a giant jellyfish, actually. And he got cut in his head. Same day, same session, we were surfing in Cabo San Lucas, middle of nowhere. And the person next to us saw my friend Jamie bleeding, and he felt so bad. He said, look, I know the doctor. I'm going to call the doctor. He's going to come to the clinic, and we're going to take care of you. I was in major pain. He was in major pain. He needed stitches. The doctor, we had a wonderful experience with that doctor from Cabo San Lucas. And when I went back to surf with her, I went and knocked on his door, and I said hello to him and all of that. But I want to let you know that I did medical tourism accidentally. So I really appreciate everything that you do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about space travel. But many of you may not know this, and I didn't know this until about 2 years ago. There is a new global space race. Prior to, in the last 5 years, the adversaries of China and Russia, who owned all the technology and all the rockets to go to space, we became more adversaries. So America started to invest in rockets and spaceships, both through NASA and through very wealthy individuals. But the reason that I want to talk a little bit about it is because it's now having an impact on the potential of space tourism and biological and pharmaceutical research. And maybe one day further tourism. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what's going on with the space race. And hopefully you'll find that interesting. Let's roll with the first video. Emilia, are you back there? Let's go to the first slide. I just want to show you this video. Sound?
Dream that I didn't think was possible. You know, when a little 5-year-old girl said, I want to go to space, that's not one thing I pursued because I didn't think it would ever happen.
This is the sixth flight. You've won 6 flight a long time. We're going to find out what all these different pieces of space flight are really like.
Yes, for sure for the science, but it's also a lifelong dream. And so my daughter's dressed up in an astronaut costume. She's 5, and we're watching it through her eyes. It brings it all home. Tecnología, yo no tengo aquí los cepillos, los en el espacio la supertecnología. Pronto.
spaceflight that only lasts one day. But it's real, and this is just the beginning. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's really going on with space. So there are multiple organizations developing rockets and spaceships to get us to space. And the primary purpose at this moment is to get humans to low Earth orbit and to provide the ability for people to fly into low Earth orbit, and develop research, analyze things from space, and even provide those who have a lot of money an opportunity to be tourists in space. But it's going to get more significant. I'm going to tell you a little bit of what I do for a living. So I'm in the computer sciences business. I do computer systems, internet, AI, all of that. So Virgin Galactic, the reason I get choked up when I see that video is Virgin Galactic came to my company and said, after we have a space flight, we have to have the aircraft down for 3 months. Because the FAA and NASA requires us to do millions and millions of informational analysis on flight, on thermal, on structure, on vibration, and it takes us 3 months to complete all the analysis. Jose, is there any way you and your team can help us use technology to do that? So what we did is we created an aerospace engineering data science pipeline. This is the idea of using very powerful computers and a architecture that allows the astronauts to ingest millions and millions of bits of data about thermal, about structure, about vibration, about performance of the aircraft, and then perform using technology that instead of them reading thousands and thousands of lines on a script, we visualize the information from the aircraft, and we allow them to perform analysis, and we run algorithms on the computers to identify anomalies so that the astronauts, the mechanics, the aeronautics, the avionics experts can analyze the data faster. So we went from 3 months aircraft on the ground to 3 weeks aircraft on the ground. That's all I'm going to say about what I do for a living. I'm proud of it, and this is one of my clients. But I use technology to help avionics, aircraft, aviation, and spaceflight. So I'm a computer nerd, basically. Let's know more about what I do for a living. Let's go back to space and what's going on. So if you all don't know this, the plans for what's happening to the moon are finished. The blueprints are done. The houses are drawn. The equipment that's required has already been determined. We are going to create, by 2026, through a set of, at least the US, through a set of missions called Artemis, we are going to create a little town, a little pueblito on the moon, on the dark side of the moon. We need the pueblito on the dark side of the moon because that's the easiest place to launch a rocket to Mars. That's where we need the city. And this is the American plan. There is a Chinese plan, there's a French plan, I don't think there's a Mexican plan, but there's a Chinese, a French plan, and there's the billionaire plan.
Maybe later.
Right? There's the Elon Musk plan. So we're going to have multiple pueblitos in the moon that are being funded by a lot of research. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is going to happen in our kids' lifespan. And what Elon Musk wants to do is actually be able to create a little spot in Mars. Now, I'm not sure that that's possible, but I think that the organizations in the moon are very possible. So, how do we get there first, right? If we're really going to have cars and people and scientists and, engineers and equipment, they're going to build a launch facility on the moon because it's easier to launch to Mars from the moon than it is from Earth. So, next up is a plan. Every one of those countries has a plan to first, we're going to populate low Earth orbit. We're going to populate it with approximately 20,000 devices, aircraft, and base stations, moon stations. And then after we populate low Earth orbit, we're going to go to GEO, and then we're going to go to the moon. We have multiple circles of orbits that we can use to populate Earth space, moon space, and cislunar space, the space in between. And that is a true plan. But here's where it gets interesting for science and maybe for healthcare. Before we get to the moon and before we develop all of these spaceships and stations between the moon and Earth. Oh, and by the way we're going to get all the equipment to Earth is we're going to stage a very, very large space station in lunar orbit. Really, really far away. It's going to take about a year to take all that payload from Earth to the moon. In fact, people think that Elon Musk is a genius. Well, he's just a good businessman, and he has good ideas. And he realized, what is the hardest part? If NASA and Russia and China and France, if they already have their plans of how to build these cities in the moon and then ultimately Mars, what do you think is the hardest thing of getting this built? What's the most difficult thing of getting this built? Because we know how to engineer buildings, not medicine. That's got to be the requirement because someone's got to take care of these people. And it may be a robot, it may be a robot and a doctor, maybe a doctor, and maybe a nurse and a robot. Let's get to that in a second. The hardest part of getting all this stuff to space is payload. You got to get the stuff up there. And it is heavy. And Elon said, gee, 5 countries trying to get thousands of tons of equipment to the moon. Wow, that's a lot of math. If I get some rockets with heavy payload, I can charge anything I want. To America, to France, to China. All he cares is about money, right?
Yeah.
So he built rockets that can create heavy payload. And he's competing with everyone else to get the payload to Mars. To the first to Leo, then the moon, then to Mars. There's a lot of money in that. So there are only 4 rocket companies that can lift heavy payload to space. SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, a French company, and a Chinese company. Only 4 rockets are available. So the government is working with, the US government, with United Launch Alliance and with SpaceX to try to move this payload forward. In that process, another billionaire, because I guess space is owned by billionaires, another billionaire named Jeff Bezos said, geez, between the launches and all this moving between Earth and the moon, we're going to have lots of space stations surrounding Earth. So he created a concept called orbital reef. And this is being built now. He's building habitat. He's building spacecraft. This is Jeff Bezos. What's called Sierra Space, but in orbital, Blue Origin. Those are the companies, but they're heavily funded by Jeff, Amazon. And so go back to the top. So the aircraft has already been built. It's going to be launched this fall. The habitats, you see that bubble habitat. That is a room that can house 4 astronauts. And moving forward here. Oh, I gotta go back to this. Yeah. So this is, when I was developing some of these computer systems for these space companies, I got to go visit and see the aircraft and touch it myself. So each one of these bubbles is a bubble habitat. And this is a major innovation in space orbit, in that because it's so heavy to lift a house to space, they've decided that if you can fold a house like a blanket and then blow it up in space, that would be a much easier house to build. And so they tested, and I've got to see this, they tested these bubble rooms in Littleton, Colorado, in the US, and they tried to blow them up. These bubble rooms are about 4 layers layers of very expensive materials that stretch but also can withstand a lot of pressure. And so that would be one of the rooms in the space station. And the way they have the connector set up, it's like Lego pieces. So they could create a Lego set of an entire base station that could house all of us. And the reason that they think this is attractive right now is because in microgravity, there are, you know better as doctors, but there are elements and characteristics of cells and biology that operate different in microgravity, where pharmaceutical research and disease state research can be advanced in space. In addition, there are other benefits of microgravity to perform scientific experiments and experiments on biology. There's already a tested microgravity scenario where we can get 4 astronauts to live in one of those units in space, and they can grow their own food in that bubble. So it's amazing what's happening. We got the spacecraft, so we've got propulsion, we got launch. What you need to get people to space are launch, big rockets, propulsion in space, habitat, ability to grow plants, so the astronauts can feed themselves, micropropulsion, and energy from solar panels. You've all seen solar panels that create energy in the US, on Earth. The amount of solar power you can get from a solar panel in space is 3x the power. So the ability for these solar panels to generate the electricity for these space stations is amazing. So in summary, you saw the video at the beginning. Space tourism is real, and it takes $300,000 to get a ticket on that flight. But if you think about all of this building that will go on the next 20 to 25 years, I think that space tourism is going to be affordable, maybe for the middle class, certainly for scientists and health professionals. And the big question is, if we got hundreds of people out there for each country, and we've got a little pueblito on the moon, who's going to take care of all these people? Maybe someone in this room, right? Healthcare professionals need to be in space. They need to be in orbit. They'll need to be on the moon. And yeah, they may be equipped with AI and robot surgical equipment, but you know, my session today was really just about craziness of what's happening in space, the space race, and the fact that no one in the space race is talking about who's going to take care of these people, how are we going to provide healthcare, and how are we going to, you know, someone building a space launch site on the moon is going to get hurt, going to break a bone, maybe need some serious surgery. No one's talking about how are we going to get healthcare professionals up to space, and I think that's the next big idea, or at least the next big problem to solve. That's it. I just wanted to do something interesting before lunch. I hope you enjoyed the session.